along the way, what did we learn? What are the lessons here? And so many things that are everyday to the cancer care team are not everyday to the patient. We go through this once, they go through this many, many times.
Debbie Parker Oliver is an educator by trade. She's a professor of medicine at Washington University in Missouri in the Division of Palliative Care. So when her husband was diagnosed with metastatic stage 4 cancer, she at least knew some of the critical questions to ask. As educators, she and her husband made a series of videos that address the concerns that people have, things such as how to even tell people about your diagnosis, how to keep your networks informed, intact, and in touch with you, how to set goals and boundaries on treatments and side effects, and how to approach quantity versus quality of life issues. Our society doesn't talk about this. The medical establishment doesn't talk about this. Insurance won't pay for the wisdom of a hospice or palliative care until your very final months. But Debbie Parker Oliver lays it all out here and in her book, Legacies from the Living Room. This podcast isn't about cancer and dying. It's about facing an inevitable and imperfect human decision we will all have to make and making it in a way that touches others and leaves behind our very best legacy. Debbie, welcome to Bump in the Road. If you would, tell us your story.
Well, I am a professor at Washington University and have been involved in hospice care for my entire professional career. Actually, I was a hospice administrator before that, and my former husband was a gerontologist and also taught. We both were teaching at University of Missouri. Life was going along wonderfully, splendidly, and all of a sudden he finds a bump in his neck as he was shaving. And he goes, "Oh, this is odd." So he mentions it to his physician when he was there for just a regular visit. And lo and behold, he had stage 4 nasopharyngeal cancer. Totally unexpected, totally out of the blue. And so our story is about that journey, 42 months. He took some initial treatment and then managed the pain and symptoms. But we chose not to spend all the time fighting the disease, but rather figuring out how we learn to make a lot of memories and have as much quality time together as what we could.
That can be a hard decision to make.
It is probably harder for a lot of other people than it was for us. It was kind of the natural decision given our backgrounds. I'd been involved in hospice, which of course is all about focusing on living rather than dying for many years. And the one thing I always heard from patients when they came into hospice is the regret that they'd wasted so much time in seeking treatments and suffering from side effects. And David really felt the same. And so it really wasn't that difficult a decision because we had a lot of living left to do and didn't want to waste a minute of it sitting around in hospitals. That was the suffering part, was when we were in the hospital.
Talk a little bit about hospice and the role of hospice, because I don't think most people really are familiar with it.
You know, in hospice, you turn your attention away from cure as we know it, meaning the elimination of disease, and instead focus on the management of symptoms. To get into hospice, you need a life expectancy of 6 months. When David was initially diagnosed, that was what the expectation was. We did go through one round of chemotherapy, and it bought him several months, and we signed on to hospice. And at that point, you choose not to go to the hospital for care anymore, not to get aggressive treatments, but just simply focus on managing all of the physical, psychological, spiritual, financial issues around living until you die, and trying to focus in on quality of life. Had an interdisciplinary team of professionals who came into our home, and nurses that would visit and help manage the pain, social workers that would help us manage the psychosocial things, and then stayed in touch with a chaplain to help through the existential journey. And the care is about, it was for him and it was also for me, because it's a patient and the family that are the focus in hospice, not just the patient. Something a little bit unique as opposed to healthcare.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned in your book is as the caregiver, nobody ever asks how you're doing.
Yeah, the common question, how is the patient doing? And all the focus is on the patient. And that's all fine and good. And we've done a lot in medicine to become what we call patient centered, where the patient is at the center of care rather than the healthcare system just dictating what needs to happen. But cancer specifically is a family disease. It affects every member of the family. And as a person's condition gets worse, the role of the caregiver becomes bigger and bigger. And a lot of research has shown that caregiving in and of itself has physical effects for the caregiver. For instance, the mortality rate is 65% higher for people who have been a caregiver as opposed to those who haven't of the same age. It takes
I
that much of a toll.
Is there a period of time for that statistics or
We
just
know that just over the course of your lifetime,
okay.
your mortality in 65% of the cases, your mortality is shortened.
Wow.
We know that roughly a third of caregivers are severely to moderately depressed and anxious as a result. And the burdens of caregiving ultimately lead caregivers to have more chronic diseases than non-caregivers, those without that experience. So it's been declared a public health crisis actually in a 2022 national strategy for caregiving, because it's affecting the health of many, many people. And the more we try to keep people at home and abide by and respect those wishes, the more we also have to support the family who has to do that work, which they're not trained to do. And so we need to put in place some things in order to educate family and to take care of their health as well. And it starts with, wow, this must be really tough on you too. How are you doing?
One of the things that you and your husband did that I thought was really remarkable was you did a series of videos that talked about not only connected you with people and kept them informed, but it talked about some of the realities and difficulties of the cancer process. Talk a little bit about your decision to do that because it really left an incredible legacy for your husband and for you.
It really did. And I'm lucky to have those videos. It also offered us the opportunity. I mean, we were both teachers in a school of medicine. And so from the very beginning, it's like this is the perfect opportunity to be really great teachers and bring the students into our world, and made us think through that experience along the way. What did we learn? What are the lessons here? And so many things that are every day to the cancer care team are not every day to the patient. We go through this once, they go through this many, many times. So early on, for instance, we recognized that there's this cycle that happens when you have chemotherapy every 21 days. And you'd have better times and you'd have really bad times. And if you could learn how to predict that, then you could make memories in the good times and you wouldn't be so afraid of the bad times because you knew this too would pass. And so we made a video, the 21 days of chemotherapy, and shared that with people. Well, about day 5, which is when he should have been recovering, he was struggling and we had to go in to the infusion unit to get some IV fluids. So we went into the infusion unit where he's laying there, he's getting IV fluids, and this man in a wheelchair came up to us. And he rolled up and he said, "You're David Oliver." And David said, "Yes, I am." And he goes, "Your videos, I just want you to know they are remarkable and they are why we are here today." And David said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "My wife was suffering. And the only reason I knew that I should bring her in so that she could get care was because you said in that video that it was time for her to be better and she wasn't better. And so here we are, she's getting IV fluids just like you, and she's going to feel better." And at that point, we both looked at each other and thought, wow, this is how we make a difference, is that we teach what we're learning along the way. And I get notes to this day from people who are grateful for that. The videos are used in teaching and training a lot of different professionals, but individuals stumble across them as well and appreciate various different parts. There's one on grief, and it's called the love grief equation, which is the subtitle of my book. And how the more you love, the more you grieve. Um, there were 25 altogether. And so we have an assortment of all different kinds of topics, some even that I did about caregiving. Um, and we brought our family into some of them, and our dog into one, and the value of pets in the process. So there's a big variety. And they were a lot of fun.
Did you find that going through chemo that it was the effects, the fatigue and whatnot were cumulative over that period?
Yeah, we that was another learning, and we had gotten another opinion before David started chemotherapy from a friend of ours who is a palliative care physician and an oncologist, and he laid it out so very clearly for us. It's like, today you are the best you are ever going to be,
Mm.
and then you have your first treatment, and you'll be about half as good as you were, and then you'll have the next treatment, and you'll be about half as good again, until at the end it's really rough. And so know that today is the best, and that will be true tomorrow and the next day as it gets worse and worse. And explain that that's because those cancers, that chemotherapy treatment is poison, and it attacks the cancer cells, which are the fastest growing cells in your body, but in doing that it also attacks good cells. And so you can't put poison in your body without side effects. And that helped us know the things that were most important to us we needed to do first, and really laid out for us the need to prioritize where we went and how we chose to spend our time.
That's an amazing insight into the process. I don't think a lot of oncologists give people that type of information.
No, they don't. And that was our major learning along the way. We had to seek out those hidden gems of information, because it's not standardly given to people. Just like the whole idea of the 21-day cycle, and watching and writing down how that flows for you so that you would know in the future. Nobody told us to do that. So that's why we made the videos. And and I to this day hope that they're helpful to people in learning things they wouldn't learn from their doctor.
So the videos are oriented both towards the general population and the medical community?
Mostly towards the general population,
Okay.
because medical students come in and they don't know any more than anyone else. And then we would get requests. That was interesting too. Um, we got They got picked up from an AP reporter, and then we were on CBS This Morning, and so the social media picked up, and we would get feedback from people, and we would get questions, and that would also help us determine what kind. They were very popular with the general population, as well as students that were just trying to learn.
So what were your priorities in terms of the things you must do?
We set forth first that we would solidify the relationships with our children, and our family would be the center of things. And we did that by, your natural instinct as a parent is to protect your kids. And we fought that and opened up, and they knew everything. They were involved in the whole process. They helped us make decisions. We had open communication, and a lot of times that meant open tears as we all went through and struggled this. That's everything from my 13-year-old granddaughter to our 30-year-old sons. And so we decided to go through it as a family. And the second piece was we wanted to travel. Travel was always an important part of our life. And David wanted to get to the Arctic Circle. We wanted to travel with our grandchildren to Europe, our older grandchildren. So we did that. We'd had that trip planned, and we were just committed to make it happen. And those two things really drove most of our other decisions. Later, a really great example of the holding on to your values, we were given an award that was to be presented in London from our videos on educating the public. And David was getting radiation therapy at the time because he'd been vomiting quite a bit. And we said, okay, we're done. He's not vomiting anymore. He's had 6 rounds of radiation therapy, and we're going to go to London. So we'll be not doing any more therapy. And the radiation oncologist goes, well, that's fine. We can take a little vacation, and then you can come back and we'll finish treatment. He goes, my husband said, no, you don't understand. I have no more symptoms, so I'm having no more radiation. We're done with that. And the oncologist goes, but I can cure you. And he said, cure? That means you get a Nobel Prize because there's no cure for my cancer. And he goes, well, what we mean by cure is that it'll go away for 6 months. It won't be visible for 6 months. And David said, that's not a cure. Cure means that it's gone forever. And the side effects that will be taking more treatment are unnecessary. I've figured out, and I've got what I need. I'm not vomiting. So we're done. And really baffled the team. But that difference in terminology is really noteworthy, because what may be considered scientific cure is not what cure is to us. And it was so much more important that he not suffer side effects, so that we could travel and we could see the world, and we could enjoy our grandson's championship football game and do all of those things rather than have him to be under the weather. And I'm happy to say that first, he lived 42 months, which they did not expect. And secondly, that those 42 months, we managed the symptoms really well. And it was only the last 7 days that were really rough. We were very, very blessed because he did not die of the side effects of treatment. He died of cancer.
Wow, that's a mouthful right there. Because people do die from the side effects of these
Oh, yeah.
treatments.
More than die of the cancer. Absolutely.
With that information, how do you factor that into making decisions? Because I think that often the patient perceives that the oncologist is they're giving them information, but it's pretty limited. And it's a tough call. I mean, the doctor's trying to figure out how much can the person absorb and understand. And no matter how bright you are, there's an emotional barrier to that. You can only take in so much information at a time. So it's difficult, I think, for the doctor to communicate. I also think that because most doctors have not been through this, they really don't know what they're doing with their patients.
Yeah. And every person values something differently.
Yeah.
And for some people, the amount of time is really important. And so they are going to fight for every day that they can get. And especially if you have a very important event coming up, if you have the birth of a grandchild or a wedding or whatever, that you're fighting towards, then maybe that's the best approach for you. Um, David early on determined what quality of life meant to him and how he wanted to die. And he wanted to die a good death. And so he created an acronym called HOPE, meaning that he took his values and made them very clear. He wanted to die at home. He did not want to die in a hospital. That was critically important. He wanted to die with other people around. He did not want to die alone. And so at the end, that meant that we were with him all the time. He wanted to be pain-free at all costs, even if it meant that he was unclear or that he would sleep more. He chose that if his pain was above a 2 on a scale of 1 to 10, we give him pain medicine because he did not want pain. And the E for hope was excited until the very end, meaning we would have fun with it. And the night before he died, we actually had a party at our house. He was out of it. He was unable to communicate. But that activity was all around him with the people that he loved. And that's how he wanted to go. That was important. He didn't want to just sit and stew and do nothing. And so all decisions that we made were around those values. When he needed radiation treatment, we did that because he was vomiting and the tumor was pressing on the vomiting center of the brain. We knew we needed to back that off because he couldn't travel. We couldn't have quality of life when you're vomiting. But once that was controlled, we didn't want the side effects of radiation therapy, the dry throat, the inability to talk, the having to carry a water bottle around, because again, that impeded our ability to do the things that we wanted to do. And but you're right, nobody helps us make those decisions. Once you enter into palliative care, palliative medicine, and hospice care, that's what they do. And because we had that experience and we had the resources and the network of people to help us do that, we were very, very lucky. And that's why sharing our story is so important. People need to ask questions. The magic question we always ask is, will it make me feel better? If you recommend this treatment, will it make me feel better? What are the risks of that versus what are the benefits? If it's going to buy me time, how much time and at what cost? Because if I'm going to have severe neuropathy in my feet, I can't get out of my house, I'm going to be super fatigued, then maybe it's not worth what benefit I'm going to get out of it. And those are all very individual choices.
They are, and everybody has an individual reaction. Is there a place for hospice to intercede in this process earlier to help people go through these types of questions and issues that will help guide both their treatment and their decision to continue or not continue treatment? Why do we have to wait so long for hospice to step in?
Unfortunately, we wait a long time. I mean, the average length of stay is 50 days for cancer patients, despite the fact you can have hospice for 6 months. Um, and half the people die within 17 days of getting on hospice. So people are getting in very late, too late to have those pre-discussions. So why is it so late? A couple of reasons. One, people don't know to ask for it. Secondly, doctors are afraid to suggest it for fear that there's this kind of stereotype that it's giving up, and we don't want to give up, instead of presenting it in a way that these people can help make decisions. Now that palliative medicine has become a specialty, it's kind of the pre-hospice movement, and a palliative medicine consult will help people walk through that. But again, people don't often get into that because they're not asking for it. And physicians, in their effort to cure people, don't feel that they need that. Or I've heard many physicians say, well, I'm doing that. But they've never experienced it. They're not trained. It is a specific training and skill set to help people through that. Just like you go to a surgeon for surgery, if you're facing a serious illness, a terminal illness, the experts in that are palliative medicine physicians. Even though you may have a great family physician, you may have a great oncologist, they hold some special knowledge, and you need to ask for it because not all systems are equipped just to give it to you. And this ability to help people weigh risks and benefits and identify their goals and live for more than time is a part of that training.
It seems to me, though, there ought to be a consult early in the process. Whether you are facing a terminal prognosis or not, something earlier in the process that makes you start to think about these things, that lays out the groundwork and a roadmap, if you will, for the things that you need to consider. Because say you go through cancer treatment and you're cured or you have no evidence of disease, just the process of going through the types of questions and issues that you're raising could potentially change your life in terms of how you look at things, how you prioritize things, and in a very good, very personalized and good way. I think our system is failing, frankly, in not allowing for that early education for the patient in terms of life longevity and choices.
Well, everyone should have
Yeah.
these kinds of discussions because you have values and you have feelings about it, and you don't know when things could happen. And the whole idea of advanced care planning and goal setting is all really important, and setting durable powers of attorney. But we are a death defying culture. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to think about it until it comes and slaps us in the face. And even then, sometimes we only want to address as little of it as we can. I hope that our experience shows people that it's not anything to be afraid of. It's as natural as being born. And you can choose to be a victim of the process and continually have crisis that you're responding to as things slap you in the face. Or you can choose to be proactive and have some control over what that looks like. But that means looking at the reality that we're all going to die, and that some of us are going to die sooner. And I will take control of how I die. And of course, in some states, you can take control of when you die. Um, but you do have ways to be in control. You have cancer, you have dementia, you have some serious or terminal disease. You can't control that, but you can control how you live in the meantime and the risks that you're willing to take in the process.
I think the topic of control versus victimhood is a really important one because I think that the medical establishment inherently fosters a victim-like mentality. You go into this big white box, they use big words, nobody tells you what's really going on, and you are powerless. You are just powerless. And if you choose to take charge, which you certainly can do, you're usually perceived as being a difficult patient. You
Oh,
don't
yeah.
know what you're talking about. You're dissed in that regard, and you may be absolutely right about everything you're saying because your doctor does not know it all.
And
So
and they really do. I mean, I would ask question after question after question and advocate endlessly, fearlessly for what we wanted to do. And you have to do that. Our healthcare system is a sick care system.
yes.
And if you don't ask, ignorance is bliss and you won't be told. And sometimes you do have to appear to be demanding. That's just how it is. Nobody else is going to advocate for you but yourself and your caregiver. And it was exhausting. We call that interactional suffering. Actually, there's a term for that.
Oh, is it really?
The suffering that you have interacting with a system that's designed to help you, but because of their rules and their structure, they don't help you. and you have to be your own best ally. And it's hard work, and that's the other reason why a lot of people don't have that energy, and they just do what they're told.
How do you go about educating yourself?
Well, luckily, I'm a researcher, and so that's what I do for a living.
But I mean, the average person, how does the average person start to educate themselves on this process and and really muster the guts to stand up to this authoritative system that wants to put you in a silo and doesn't want to let you out?
You know, reading things, there's lots of information out there. There's lots of movies and such out there about this topic. It's becoming more and more prevalent. And just deciding that you're going to learn and you're going to face the fact and do it is really a key to success.
I know one of the books that I read that I found very influential was David Servan Schreiber's book. That may have been way before the time you went through this, but did you ever come across that? And is
No,
that
not
something
that. I did not that one, but I tell you what was helpful to me was one called The Anatomy of Hope,
Mhm.
because when that moment comes, nobody's giving you hope. They may not, they're giving you hope in chemicals and in treatment, but not, that does not feel like hope. As a matter of fact, people get really depressed. And what I learned is that hope is found from within. And that's what that book is all about. And somebody recommended it to me, and that's how I found it. You find these things by talking to people and getting online and looking, and it's not because healthcare is going to just offer them to you. A few places that are a little more progressive do that, but you can't count on it. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
What do you think about this whole paradigm in cancer about fighting cancer? Are there other paradigms that maybe are equally powerful?
You know, you can fight cancer or you can fight for life. And there's time and there's hope for quality. And that's basically what we chose to do, is redefine hope and not fight the battles on the battlefield of a hospital with the poison chemicals, but instead fight the idea that time and another day is going to be a good day. It may or may not be a good day. And so our decision making turned from the battlefield of cancer being the enemy to symptoms were the enemy,
Mhm.
because that's what stopped us. And symptoms you can manage. The cancer, you can't really manage it, but the symptoms can be managed. And get very aggressive and fight the symptoms and let the cancer do what the cancer will do.
How is your life now after your husband has passed?
I miss him every day still. Um, and ev- Grief is more than what we talk about. It When you're close to somebody, everything about your world revolves around them. When they're gone, you're thrown off axis and you have to find out who you are by yourself. And so it's been a real growing process. And at first you survive, and then ultimately, hopefully, you learn to thrive, and which is what I've done. I'm blessed that my family is amazing, and I have amazing grandchildren. Now grandchildren that he never will know, but we talk about him. We keep him alive through our memories and our stories. And my grandchildren all know Grandpa David and talk about, well, Grandpa David would have loved this. And Grandpa David left letters for the one grandson that we had that was an infant, and instructions to read it on his 10th birthday. And every year he would try to talk me into reading it early because he knew that he had it. And when it was his 10th birthday last year, we made a big deal about it. Um, and it's amazing how he lives on through, and he even tells his sister, who tells the youngest cousin, and now my youngest grandchild is 2, and even they know Grandpa David. And that's important. We have pictures, we talk about it, we're open about it. And we do special little things at birthdays and bake birthday cakes for people when they don't have their birthday anymore. All of those things are very special traditions that help you move forward and move ahead. But time makes there be a scab over the wound, but it doesn't disappear. You just learn to live with it.
Yeah, somebody once described grief as at first it consumes your entire world. But then as time goes on, it becomes smaller and smaller, and your world becomes larger and larger. And it never goes away, but proportionately, it becomes a smaller part of your life. And I thought that was an awfully good
That's
description.
great. That's a great description.
What advice would you give to a spouse dealing with this?
Understand that you've got to take care of yourself while you're taking care of someone else. And that is so much easier said than done, because the person you love more than anything in the world needs you now more than ever. And it's the greatest gift that you can give somebody. But if you go down, you can't take care of somebody. Like on the plane, they say, put the oxygen on you first before you put it on your children. And that's really true. I was in the hospital myself a couple of times because I didn't take my own advice. And I knew that I had to take care of myself, and yet I didn't. And that means you've got to take care of yourself physically. You still need to go to the doctor. You still have to do the things for your health, and you still need to eat right, and you still need to sleep, which is very hard as you're sleeping with one ear open to listen for that other person. And you need to get away and have respite and have other people help you. You need to learn how to ask for help, because you cannot do this by yourself.
I think, as you pointed out earlier, we're a society that is just horrified by death. We don't want to talk about it, yet it's such a part of the life cycle. And I'm in awe of how you two managed actually the decisions you had to make, and how you really opted for life, even in a really difficult situation. Um, my hat is really off to you on that, and I hope your videos get massive distribution.
And there's even a video on how to make decisions.
How do you make decisions?
We called it, I think the video is called Decisions, Decisions, Decisions. And it's the whole thinking behind risk and benefits and goals and objectives and many of the different decisions that we made and why we made them. So there's nothing like a good example that helps people figure it out for themselves too.
Where can people find these videos?
They are on my website for my book, www.legaciesfromthelivingroom, all one word, .com.